This video represents the work for Tuesday's lesson on mean, median, mode, and range. If you have not yet done Monday's lesson on calculating mean, you need to go back and do Monday's lesson and the Google Slides assignment. Make sure you guys are working through these in order, or else you're going to be really confused if you try to start at like Thursday when you haven't done Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So make sure you go in order. Make sure you're keeping up with your tracker and attending office hours as needed. We had this at the very beginning of yesterday's lesson. We talked about Ryan tracking the number of views on a company website in order to develop a plan for posting new promotions. Yesterday, we dealt with mean. We had a full lesson on that, and you had an activity on that. Today, we're going to discuss how Ryan could calculate median, mode, and range for each day in order to analyze the entire situation. We had this slide at the beginning of yesterday as well. These are important vocabulary terms. Previously, we focused exclusively on mean, but today we're going to focus on all of these with almost exclusively on median, mode, and range, though, as we did a whole lesson on mean. Notice the pen and the notebook icon came up. You need to write these definitions down. Now, we know to find mean or average, because those are the same words. You add all of the values up, or the elements up, and you divide it by the number of values there. So 2 plus 4 plus 7 gets 15. 15 divided by 3 is 5. The mean is 5 here. Now, for median. Median is the middle number in a data set. If there is an even number of elements, it is the average of the middle two numbers. What that means, if you have two middle numbers, you find the average of those two middle numbers by adding them and dividing by 2. In this very simplistic example, if you have 1, 4, and 9, 4 is the middle, so the median is 4. Mode is the most common element. So if we have this data set and we have 1, 4, and we have 7 happening twice, 7 happens more than any other value, so the mode is 7. Now, we're going to get into this in a little bit, but there can be no mode and there can also be more than one mode. Range is a measure of variability. So, range is not a measure of central tendency. It is a measure of spread or variability. And it is found by taking the highest number, the highest element, and subtracting away the lowest element or lowest value. So in this 3-value data set, 10's the greatest number, 2 is the least. 10 minus 2 is 8, so the range is 8. But once again, range is a measure of variability or difference or spread. It is not a measure of centrality like mean, median, and mode are. Now, we're going to break these apart one at a time, and the first thing we're going to look at actually is range. So, notice the pencil and paper. You can pause, you can paraphrase, do what you need to do, but take some adequate notes here, so when you go do your assignment today, you won't be confused as to what you need to do. Range is the difference between the largest element and the smallest element, or largest number and biggest number. It is a way to tell how far apart the data is. It is a measure of variability, which is spread, not a measure of centrality, as I just said. So if we have this data set here, I'm looking over here at green. First thing I'm doing is I'm identifying my greatest value, which is 18. Next thing I'm doing is identifying my smallest value, which is 2. I find the difference of those two numbers, which means I subtract, and 18 minus 2 is 16. So the range of this data set is 16. Now, we have 3 examples here that we're going to go through as well. If you are confident in this, what you can do is just pause the video, do all 3 of these, and then fast forward and just make sure you have it right. But if you need more of a walkthrough, listen, and I'm going to go through all 3 of these. So for this first one up here, I have this data set, I need the range. So all I'm doing is identifying the largest and smallest element, and then I'm finding the difference. Now, I'm making sure that I pick the correct 2 numbers. So I'm taking my time and paying attention to what I'm doing. So the largest element is clearly 34 here, okay? I'll make this bigger so we're clear. There we go. Now, the smallest element, we got 12, 3. 3 is clearly the smallest. So all I need to do now is I am going to make this smaller. Let's make this red. I'm going to take my largest value and subtract away my smallest value, and that gets a value of 31. So my range here is 31. Remember, that is not a measure of central tendency. That is a measure of variability. The spread of my data is 31, meaning the biggest and smallest numbers are 31 away from each other. All right, let's move down to this second example. I'm going to use a very similar strategy, the exact same strategy. In this case, they have labels to them, but it doesn't change. It's still a data set. So I'm looking for the tallest person first, which is the biggest number, which looks like is 170 centimeters. And then the smallest, we got 148, we got 129, 128. Okay, so 128 is the smallest. Now, what I'm doing is I'm double checking, and I just realized I made a mistake. So that's why we're doing that. This is bigger than 170. 128 is the smallest. So let me just double check, all right? Anything bigger than 171? No. Anything smaller than 128? No. Okay, so take the time to check it. Now, I'm going to subtract the greatest minus the smallest in order to find the spread of the data here in terms of range, and that ends up getting a value of 43 centimeters. So the range here is 43 centimeters. All right, moving down. This one's a little bit more complicated because it's going to require some critical thinking skills. If the range is 10, which of the following cannot be the value of y? So we have an unknown here. What I'm going to do first is I actually want to calculate the current range. The reason I'm going to do that is that's going to give me a starting point and some information in terms of where I need to go heading forward. So let me highlight based on what I have my largest and smallest number. Well, my largest number is 24. It could be y, but based on what I know, 24. And then 14 is my smallest. So 24 minus 14 is currently, that's 10. So currently, if I kind of ignore y here, my range is 10. And that's what the question wants. It wants a range of 10. So what I need to do is I need to pick a value that is not less than 14 and not greater than 24. Because if I pick a number that's greater than our largest value or less than our smallest value, it is going to spread out the range, okay? So in this case, which of the following cannot be the value of y? Well, if y was 14, my smallest value would still be 14 and I would get 10. That's okay. If I picked 19, my smallest value would still be 14 and my greatest value would still be 24, so that wouldn't change anything. 9 is where we run into problems. Because if y is 9, my range would be 24 minus 9, which is not a range of 10. It's greater than that. 20 does not affect it because 14 would still be the least and 24 would still be the greatest. So the value that cannot be y here is 9. Any of these other values would work and still have a range of 10. Taking a look now at mode. Mode is the most common element in a data set. Now, sometimes there is more than one mode, and there also can be no mode at all. There's no mode if no number repeats. So if you just have a list of numbers and nothing is there more than once, that represents no mode. If you have a number repeating the same number of times and that being the most that a number repeats, you'll have more than one mode. And you'll understand that as we practice here. Now, over here in the green, I have this data set. And if I'm looking at mode, I want the number that occurs most often. So I see 9 occurring twice. 3 also occurs twice, but 8 occurs 3 times. So the mode of the data set is 8 because 8 occurs most often. 3 and 9 are not modes just because they appear more than once. They need to appear the most, and 8 appears the most. Now, in terms of there being more than one mode, if this data set had one more 9 in it, the modes would be both 8 and 9 because 9 would be there 3 times and 8 would be there 3 times, okay? If no number repeated at all, there'd be no mode. But in this case, this mode is 8. Now, let's look at these examples. Same thing I said before. If you're confident, pause it, try it on your own, and just fast forward for the answers. If you need me to walk through it a little bit, I can do that with these 2 problems. So this data set, we're going to identify what is the mode. Sometimes, by the way, with the mode, it's going to help, and I'm going to do this for this one, to organize your numbers from least to greatest. Because what that will do, and I'm going to mark them off as I go through. So I have 1, 2. But what it's going to do is it's going to line up. We got 3, 4. It's going to line up the same numbers next to each other. So it's a lot easier to count. You do not have to do this, but it can be very helpful and can help with your organization. What's next? Looks like we got 2 8s. Cross those out. And I'm just crossing them out to make sure I do not repeat. And it allows me to pick up on things I missed. So for instance, 5 I missed. So I can put that here. 10 and then 11. And then another thing I like to do is just count to make sure I have all the numbers. So in my original data set, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers. All right, now this becomes very easy to see. 4 repeats twice and 8 repeats twice. And that is the most that any number repeats. So 4 and 8 are the modes. This is an example where there are 2 modes. All right, moving down. If the mode is 19, what is x? Well, currently 19 is repeating 1, 2, 3 times. But what I see is 13 is also repeating 3 times. So currently the mode isn't just 19, the mode is 19 and 13. But if we make x 19, now 19 is the mode because 19 appears 4 times, which is more than any other number. So in this case, x has to be 19. That's the only possibility, or else your modes are going to be both 19 and 13 rather than just 19. Last one we're going to look at is median. Now, median's a little bit more complicated than mode and range. Median is a way to find the middle of the data set. So to find the median or the middle, you need to line up all the elements first. You need to either put them in least to greatest order or greatest to least order, ascending or descending order. Ascending means small to big, descending means like decreasing, bigger to smaller. It works either way, and you'll still be able to find the middle. Now, if there are 2 middle numbers, which exist when there's an even number of items, the median is the average of those 2 numbers. So let's take a look at this example. If we have this data set, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to order it. That helped us with mode, and it's necessary with median. It even helps with range because you can then find the biggest and smallest number very easily. So it never hurts, regardless of what you're trying to find, to order the numbers. The one that it really doesn't help with at all, though, is mean, because you're just adding, and it doesn't matter, really, the order when you add. But for median, you need to order them. Now, you need to find the middle. You can do this with your fingers, and you can move them in. I like crossing out from side to side like this. And then we're left with 9 with 3 markouts on each side, so 9 is the middle. Or you can use your fingers. Whatever way, you need to find the middle number, okay? 9 here is the median. Now, if we look at something like this, okay, we have this data set, and we order it first, and watch as I go to find the middle. Taking one at a time from each side. Okay, now I'm here. I have 2 middle numbers because I can't mark off 1 and 1 because I'll be left with nothing. When you have 2 middle numbers, you find the average of the 2 middle numbers. And there's 2 numbers, so you would add them. We already learned how to find mean or average. You add and divide by the number of numbers here. So you would add 6 and 7, which is 13, and then you would divide by 2. 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. So the median for this example is 6.5. So it's easy like this one to just find the middle. If there's 2 middle numbers, you have to add them and divide by 2 so you can find the average of those 2 numbers. Now, mean is the most commonly used measure of central tendency, right? You hear average all the time. But medians can be more accurate when there are outliers. And this was mentioned in the mean lesson. Mean is highly affected by outliers. Outliers being numbers that are way bigger or way smaller than the rest of your data set. Median, because it chops off the ends, the top end and the bottom end, and aims for the middle. Median is best to use for outliers because it kind of ignores those outliers. They don't play a role. Whereas mean, if there's outliers, it's going to shift the measure very far down or very far up, depending on if that outlier is bigger or smaller than the rest of the data. So just keep that in mind. Median is better and more accurate when there are outliers. Now we have these two median examples here. We're going to go through these. First thing I'm going to do with this data set is I need to order it. I know it's frustrating because there's a lot of numbers here, but it is what it is. So I'm going to do least to greatest. I'm more comfortable with that, but you could also do greatest to least. Smallest number is 1, then I see a 2. I'm going to cross them out to keep track. And then I see a 3 here. And then I see 2 4s. So 4 may be my mode, who knows. Moving forward, I see a 5. I see a 7. Notice the organization. Then I see 2 8s. So 8 is also a mode currently because that's also repeated twice. And then I see just 10, 11, 12. Okay, 10, 11, 12. Once again, I'm going to count. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's just the way to guarantee I got all of the numbers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross out until I get to the middle. Here, here. Now because there are 12, which is an even number, I know I'm going to be left with 2 middle numbers. I already know that, but I need to find those 2 middle numbers. All right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marked off here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're left with 2 middle numbers. I know the average of those is 6 already, but 5 plus 7 equals 12. I'm going to divide that by 2 and get 6. So the median here of this data set is 6. All right. Down here, if the median is 26.5, what is Z? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see what I currently have, meaning I'm going to organize the numbers I currently have from least to greatest. So I have 22, 25, 27, 28, 37. That one's kind of easy because there's not as many numbers. So 25, 27, 28, 37. Now the median is 26.5. So this is what I'm thinking here, okay? 26.5 is directly between 26 and 27. So when I assign a value to Z and put it in here, I'm going to end up with 2 middle numbers because I'm going to end up with 6 total data points. So that's going to be an even number, so there's going to be 2 middle numbers. Because I need 26.5 to be my middle, I know Z is going to have to be 26. Why? Well, I can just check this. If I get rid of this, and this, this, and this, I end up with these 2 numbers. 26 plus 27 divided by 2 gets 26.5. So that is just me thinking critically, noting 26.5 is directly in the middle, or it would be the average of 26 and 27. So I know the value I need to put in there is 26. So in this case, Z equals 26. So at this point, we should know how to do mean from yesterday. We should now have developed skills with median, mode, and range. You are going to go into Tuesday's assignment, which is titled Mean, Median, Mode, and Range. Barbara Carcoen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know fully about her like I do Jackie Robinson, but it's a chance for you and me when I go through it to learn a little bit more about her. So it's the same setup really as the Jackie Robinson one. If you need help with the directions, make sure you did Monday's work. That may be why you're struggling, or reach out for support. Once you're done with that, you're done with work for Tuesday. So you can either take a break, or you can just power through and start on Wednesday.